Happy Easter, everyone. This has been a year of crosses. Would you agree? Millions have died from the pandemic. Our hearts have been torn open as we are having a reckoning with personal and systemic racism. Our political divisions as a country have resulted in tyrannical violence and conspiratorial ideologies. Our plans were obliterated as isolation became a necessity. Our forests burned to the ground as we choked on smoke, and the sky turned red. And then there are the many private crosses each of us have carried through this tsunami of trials. Just this week, at our service of remembrance, we recounted those we lost of so many loved ones. Over 30 families at St. John's lost loved ones since last Easter. Together we remembered them without the comfort of a hug or the assurance that comes from just being together. How do we get to Easter? Many of you know that over these months I have all but begged you to pay attention to the pain and grief in your heart, to not try and sidestep your journey by saying you are fine, or that others have it worse than you. Of course, as always, I have been preaching to myself. If I cannot pay attention to and acknowledge and address the grief and pain in myself, how can I be open to being present to the grief and pain in the world? The same self-installed shield around my heart, which seemingly protects me from my pain, also keeps out the pain of others. If I don't let my own grief sink in, it means others' grief also does not sink in. If I want to call myself a follower of Jesus, then I should follow his example. Jesus never said, "I'm fine." Jesus was hanging from the cross, and he never said, "Some people have it worse." Instead, he modeled for us the power of being present to his suffering and how that kind of courageous presence has the ability to connect with the world, not only with ourselves. Meeting the needs of the world does not happen by denying who you are, but being who you are. It's not selfish to be attentive to our pain and grief. Labeling it as self-absorbed is just an excuse to avoid it, to suppress it, to deny it, and in so doing disconnect us from the pain of others. So right about now you may be asking, is Scott aware that it's Easter? Has he mistakenly pulled up his Good Friday sermon? But hear this. The path to Easter is through Good Friday. Now you can get to bunnies, Easter egg hunts, beautiful dresses and hats, and lots of ham and chocolate by going around Good Friday, but you cannot arrive at the profound joy and hope of resurrection by avoidance. In Maine, there is a phrase that always amuses me. When asking directions from an old timer, you often hear them say, "You can't get there from here." I've kind of lost my Maine accent. I've been gone too long. It's a crazy phrase, but it's also profound. The point is that to really find your way to your destination, you may have to head to another destination first. Otherwise, you might get lost again. You have to arrive somewhere else first before you can reach the place you are really looking for. They might say, "You can't get to Easter from here. You have to go to Good Friday first." Where does the Easter message break into the world? At a moment of profound grief, profound despair, profound darkness. The story of Easter morning has Mary courageously embracing her tears and profound grief. She heads to the tomb while it is still dark. She is alone, feeling powerless, broken, and overwhelmed with sadness, and she's compelled to attend to Jesus' body. There is not an ounce of hope in her. We know this because she does not arrive at the tomb and rejoice that it's empty, but rather assumes that someone has stolen the body. What she models for us is that we have to walk toward the tomb to get to Easter. If the resurrection is not sinking in, ask yourself this question: are you aware of your grief? It takes great faith and courage to walk toward the tombs in your life. Many of the disciples never went to the tomb. Even the disciples avoided it. It was a woman that went first. Mary is the Easter guide. In fact, as we celebrate the power and leadership of women, let us never forget that the first Easter sermon was preached by a woman attending to her grief. I want to share with you an insight I had recently. It is something so obvious, I've missed it most of my life. Generally, I've experienced religion as trying to impose something on me, to make me something I am not. Much of my church experience has made me feel like there was someone was trying to correct me or conform me or indoctrinate me. So that being the case, Christian faith seemed irrelevant to me for most of my life because it was not about my very real life, but about someone else's design for my life. So the other day I ran across a very famous saying of Jesus and noticed something that was there in plain sight. But it was brand new for me. Jesus said, "Take up your cross and follow me." For some reason, I've always read this as Jesus saying, "Take up my cross and follow me." That one word, your, makes faith relevant instead of something that heaps on demands. I was never fully engaged in my faith because I felt like I needed to take up someone else's cross. And I've always known I will never be able to do the things Jesus has done or other great people have done. I don't have it in me. But Jesus didn't ask us to take up his cross. Jesus said, "Take up your cross." This is huge for me. I may not have it in me to be a great saint, but I do have me inside of me. God is not asking me to take on more, but to respect my actual story. He's not calling me to consider an alternative reality, but to embrace my own reality, to embrace self-examination and be true to who I am and where I am right now. I have a cross. You all have a cross. It's enough. Jesus doesn't ask us to do anything else than to take it up and let him help us with it. I know what my cross is, and you know what your cross is. It's right there in your heart. You can feel it. I don't have to convince myself or you that there is a cross you are bearing right now. Jesus did not ask us to take up more. He asks us to simply acknowledge the cross we know is right in front of us. Taking up our cross means simply to touch it, to feel its weight, to feel the splintery reality of our story. And when we take up our cross, he simply offers to help. He says, "Let me show you how to get to Easter. Trust me. I'm an expert cross carrier. Come this way." Now, there is great resistance to embracing the truth of our story. The first stage in the grief process is, after all, denial. Do we want to face ourselves, the broken places of where we come from? Do we really want to disrupt those glorious narratives that make us look good? I'm the good father. I'm the good Christian. We're the good church. We're a good country. Look at how we are doing with racism. What happens when the polished narrative of our country is broken in two? More violence, this time against our Asian community. And what happens when my personal narrative has to change? I grieve, which is to say, I go through the stages of grief, which include denial, anger, depression, bargaining, and hopefully acceptance. Acceptance is Easter. But you can't get there from here. The main guide would tell you we have to go to a place called denial, and then places like sadness, anger, depression, bargaining. Once you go through all those other stages, and don't we love to talk about stages because it sounds like we have it all figured out? Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. The fact is, grief is all over the place, and the journey is messy and out of control. But once we journey into the depths of feeling, of honesty, of truth, we will arrive at a joyous breakthrough. I love our presiding bishop. We are blessed to have him. And in his Easter sermon to all of us this week, he said something that hit me at the core of my struggle. When I think about my resistance to accept my cross, it often is because I feel I'm losing control. I'm a fixer. I'm a renovator. I'm a builder. I want to be in charge. And if I let myself become vulnerable to my limitations, my grief, my sin, my mistakes, my profound need, I become afraid because I am no longer in control. Bishop Curry said that Mary not only went to the tomb while it was dark, but she did so not knowing who would move the stone. The fixer part of myself says, what poor planning. Heading somewhere when you don't have the resources or power to reach your goal? We fear moving toward those heavy things in our life because it feels like a lack of control. That stone in your gut, in your heart, is too heavy for you alone. But Mary just took a step and walked toward her Good Friday, and God took care of the rest. We need but offer all of who we are at the cross, and God will move that stone. You and I literally stand at a crossroads. We will take up the cross that is uniquely ours and follow him. We will. It is the story of Easter. It is the way to Easter. We have a great guide in Jesus who showed us the way, proved he was victorious over the cross, and who invites us to simply be true to our real story. I want to end this reflection by sharing with you a part of your history. Behind me is what is called a Christus Victor. This cross reaches back into the history of St. John's. Ages ago, it used to be behind the altar, and then it ended up in the narthex. After the great flood, it was stored in my office, and after the renovation, it found its home in the vestry room. It is not a crucifix, nor is it simply an empty cross. It is called a Christus Victor because it connects the suffering with the victory. They are one and the same. Where is Easter? It's at the cross. It's with the cross. So don't fear your cross. You can get there from here if you take it up, for you will find that the tomb you dread is empty, and a new and glorious way awaits you.